our family of 5 lived in the west end of the city, opposite Elizabeth Park, in a 3-story house located near the seminary at 165 Elizabeth Street. Shortly after we took up residence here, some neighbors took these historic movies of us 3 kids putting on an acrobatic show with our father. As the oldest boy, I was able to perform the most advanced stunts, like these. This one, with Paul, is called the kangaroo walk. And this is the sledgehammer, with me on the receiving end. As a family, we did have a lot of fun, along with the expected trials and tribulations occasioned by having 3 active boys living together in one household. I enrolled in the private preparatory Kingswood School in West Hartford. At the time that I finished 8th grade, we had a dog named Rusty. In the fall, I had the chore of getting leaves from the park to protect our flower beds. I soon found the easiest way to pick up the leaves, and this sort of movie magic has enhanced my life ever since. For 4 years, I rode my bike daily the 3 miles from home to the Kingswood campus in West Hartford. One fun thing I did, however, was to organize a movie club so that I could get free passes to downtown movie theaters like the Strand here, for which I would write film reviews for the Kingswood newspaper. Youthful age of 16, to enter Dartmouth College in the fall, where I would become the 4th generation of Barstows to attend this beautifully situated college in Hanover, New Hampshire. But this time in my life is chiefly remembered for the opportunity it provided for me to produce my first full-fledged movie epic. In the mid-1930s, Tarzan of the Apes, Edgar Rice Burroughs' jungle nobleman, had become my latest hero through the Hollywood films starring Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic swimming champion, and Maureen O'Sullivan as his mate. I decided it would be fun to film and direct an original story about Tarzan, and I recruited my 2 brothers and 3 young neighborhood ladies to go on location in the wilds of Granby, Connecticut, to make a jungle adventure film which we called Tarzan and the Rocky Gorge. It started with my brother Paul getting inspired while reading a Tarzan book to go to Africa and see Tarzan in person. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer produced its first big Tarzan movie in 1932. They called it Tarzan the Ape Man, based upon the jungle-raised character created 20 years earlier in 1912 by the prolific American author Edgar Rice Burroughs. Burroughs called his heroic character Tarzan of the Apes, not the Ape Man, and his original Tarzan novel begins in the year 1886. The orphan son of a British nobleman is found and raised by a tribe of great apes when his parents die after being shipwrecked on the jungle shore in West Africa. The boy grows to manhood among the apes, learning their ways and making the trees both his home and his playground. A knife he had found as a boy gave him superiority over the beasts he lived among and enabled him both to secure food and to fight off attacks. He made friends with the elephants, who often were his allies. In the MGM movie, the producers used Indian elephants to whom they attached large artificial ears to make them look more like native African elephants. And of course, Tarzan loved diving and swimming in the mountain streams, despite the threats of crocodiles and hippopotami. But the movie Tarzan was perhaps most famous for his wild yell, originated by Johnny Weissmuller himself. As noted by Hollywood author and film historian Rudy Belmer, all the kids in America during the 30s and early 40s would run around yelling like Johnny Weissmuller, or trying to yell like him, climbing and swinging from trees and loving all that. It was big. Naturally, the MGM Tarzan movies featured the remarkably chaste, but nevertheless quite affecting relationship between Tarzan and Jane Parker, as embodied by Johnny Weissmuller and Maureen O'Sullivan. Jane was the adventurous daughter of a British ivory trader. Tarzan kidnapped her, and she taught him to speak rudimentary English.
Jane?
Jane.
And you? You?
Tarzan. Tarzan.
Tarzan.
Jane. Tarzan. Jane.
That's right.
Tarzan. Jane. Tarzan. Harry. Martin, my friend. Tarzan.
That's right.
How are you? Very well, thank you, cousin.
The story of Tarzan and his jungle mate was an immense part of popular culture in the 1930s. Tarzan became a worldwide pop idol, and it was out of this social milieu that I and my two brothers were inspired to create our own, just for the pure fun of it, fictional dramatization of Tarzan in the Rocky Gorge. Back in 1936, playing with a dog was a favorite pastime at the Barstow residence in Hartford, Connecticut. One afternoon, young Paul Barstow, while engaging in another of his favorite pastimes, reading about Tarzan of the Apes, suddenly was struck with a brilliant idea. Why not go to Africa and find Tarzan in person? So here we have Paulus Rufus Barstinio, the eminent African explorer, all rigged out and ready to start on this historic safari. he had enlisted 3 neighborhood friends to join him on this great adventure. And they immediately set out for the wilds of Africa. When they finally arrived in the jungle, they found a promising-looking mountain pathway, and Paulus kept count of his helmeted and jacketed fellow travelers. 1, 2, and 3, identified on the back of their jackets as being true loves, while they all headed downward into the forest, being careful to avoid wild animals and other creatures that they knew were around. But they had this great goal of seeking to find the real Tarzan. They came across a small mountain stream and decided to cross it. Paulus led the way, and notice, please, his socks as he leaps skillfully from rock to rock. On the other side of the stream, there was a giant boulder. And what do we have here? Some strange character is looking out from around the rock. Why, it is none other than Mahatme Slink-Around, coming out to greet the safari. But as he greets them, he also gives them a solemn warning. You go away. You no come here. This Tarzan country. Tarzan lives here. You stay away. Well, they immediately went into a huddle to decide what to do, and of course decided that they wanted to continue because this was just the reason they had come here, to see Tarzan. And then Paulus Rufus Barstow made a nearly fatal error. He let Mahatme Slink-Around get away. But the safari, knowing now that they were in the area where they might find Tarzan, continued on their way up this mountain stream, along the side of a rocky gorge, and to a cliff overlooking a waterfall and a small pool. What a beautiful spot. It was a hot summer day, so Paulus took off his hat. But here is Slink-Around up on the opposite hillside. What is he up to? Paulus takes off some more of his clothing so he can be free to breathe in the fresh air on the top of the waterfall. He doesn't see Slink-Around over there. He's just enjoying the atmosphere. But Slink-Around has a gun in his hand. Look out, Paulus! Oh, oh, oh! I've been hit! He falls over the falls, down into the pool below. Slink-Around must have really been desperate to try to stop him that way. But the safari members come to Paul's rescue. They jump into the pool. They dive down into the pool. Well, they get into the water below one way or another. And then the 3 of them together, grabbing Paulus and nearly drowning him in the process, manage nevertheless to tow him over towards the shore so they can seek to resuscitate him. Careful now, carry him up to the beach there. Watch out. Oops. Well, then these 3 beautiful trail mates revive him with kisses. And Paulus is as good as new and ready to start out again. So now they proceed more cautiously up the trail here. They have to beware of this man who had warned them. He must have been trying to protect Tarzan from these intruders. And there he is, up the trail ahead of them. Stay behind, girls. I'll take care of this, says Paulus. And so brave Paulus Rufus Barstow moves up the trail behind Slink-Around. And he grabs him, and they engage in a titanic hand-to-hand struggle. Finally, Paulus wrests the gun away from him and then forces Slink-Around to go back down to where the safari members are. Slink-Around bows politely, but now they tell him We came here to find Tarzan, and we want you to show us where he is. So, Slink Around, with a gun in his back, had no choice but to lead the safari to where the Tarzan he had tried to protect from these intruders was. This was perhaps the most exciting and dangerous part of the entire journey, because they were right here going to have to get into this mountain stream, infested with crocodiles and no doubt hippopotami and other wild animals inhabiting the area. But they bravely followed Slink Around, plunging into the pool, swimming upstream, and climbing over the great rocks in this spectacular gorge. This was a tremendous natural rocky gorge. It must have been at least 50 feet high from the bottom up to the top. And what a great location where they hoped now they would come across Tarzan in person. Fortunately, the members of the safari had brought their bathing suits with them, so they didn't mind getting into the water, though one of them did get stuck on a big rock. Then suddenly, they heard a cry. Oh! Oh! Look, up there on top of the rocks. Oh! It's none other than Tarzan himself. And tearing down over the rocks on the mountainside, Tarzan comes to greet them all. He seems to welcome these visitors. He comes over and gives each one of them the jungle greeting. "Fine," he says. "I'm glad to see you here. It's fun to have someone come and see me. Let me show you around." One of the members of the safari had found herself a bathtub right there in the rocks where the water was rushing by. This was much to Tarzan's amusement. "Ha, ha, 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 ha." Then Tarzan took Paulus Rufus Barstenio up to the top of a tall cliff, and he showed him what he liked to do just for fun, jumping off the top of the cliff down 15 feet into the water below. And believe it or not, Paulus was able to get up his courage and also jump off the cliff into the pool below. But then Tarzan showed them a feat only he could perform, leaping out over the waterfall into another shallow pool where he would sometimes get stuck in the bottom. Doing it again, he managed eventually to make his way up to the surface. And that was quite a thrill. But then, having shared these adventures with all of them, Tarzan had to say goodbye and take his departure. Diving off into 6 inches of water, he struggled upstream, and that was the last they saw of the great Tarzan in person. They had certainly had a wonderful time. On the way home, some of them started looking for the jewels of Opar in the water of the pool. Mahahatme Slink Around had decided to reform and to return to civilization with the safari. He decided that Tarzan didn't need him to protect him anymore. When they got back to dry land, they shared many tales about their fantastic adventures. They kept trying to decide whether the real Tarzan was better than the book Tarzan. Slink Around insisted that the real Tarzan was much better than the book Tarzan. But in any case, Tarzan had always been one of Paulus Rufus Barstenio's great heroes, and they had finally realized their dream of seeing him in person. Tarzan, my Tarzan. For the record, it should be noted that after this dramatic start, Paul Rogers Barstow went on to a long and distinguished career as actor, director and teacher and head of the Wellesley College Theater. John Barstow became a dedicated Christian minister and missionary. Robbins Barstow devoted his life to public education in the state of Connecticut. All three married and had children, and their families maintained close ties through many decades. Stay tuned now for a dramatic sequel. In 1974, 38 years after the making of the original Barstow family Tarzan film epic, the same leading characters reassembled in Wellesley, Massachusetts, to do a remake sequel with a new cast of supporting players. Once again, we have Paul Barstow, this time on the grounds of Wellesley College in Wellesley, Massachusetts, reading about his favorite hero, wishing for the return of Tarzan, and wondering about the lost last whale. Again, he is struck with that brilliant inspiration. Why not go to Africa again on safari to see the real Tarzan? And here he is, Paulus Rufus Barstow, the eminent African explorer, all outfitted with everything he might need on such a dangerous, far-fetched adventure. And this time, he has recruited not 3 but 4 beautiful women to serve as members of his entourage. Once again, they set off together, heading for the jungle in quest of the great Tarzan. This time, it was winter, and they could see the snows of Kilimanjaro as they crossed the Serengeti plain. Look, there's a wild dog, or perhaps even a hyena, running along beside them. Down in the valley, they find a frozen lake, which they decide to explore. So, here they go for Paulus to keep count of. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. And that's 4. What a great gang of adventurers. Once again, using a branch of leaves to keep the flies away, Paulus leads them to the edge of the mountain lake. But what do we have here behind this narrow tree? Why, it's none other than Mahahatma Slinkaround again. And once again he has a warning. After he greets the safari, and they greet him back, he tells them once more, "You know, come here, this Tarzan country, Tarzan here, you go back." Well, the safari members go into their huddle, and of course they again decide to defy Slinkaround's warning, because seeing Tarzan was the very reason they had come here. And then Paulus Rufus Barstow once more makes a nearly fatal error. He lets Mahahatma Slinkaround get away. But here we have a beautiful waterfall. And Paulus removes his cape and his helmet. He takes his helmet off. Well, he finally manages to ditch his helmet. But here is Slinkaround coming back. And this time he's armed with, oh, good gracious, it's an orange. While Paulus is breathing in the fresh air, the orange is thrown, and Paulus is hit. Oh, ah! Over the cliff he falls. It looks like he's gone forever under the waterfall. But oh no, there he is. He has survived. Help me. Oh, help me. Come save me. Well, after rescuing him, all his beautiful trail mates revive him with kisses again. And Paulus and his safari are more ready than ever to take up the chase. They find Slinkaround going up a hillside, but Paulus overtakes him, and once again they engage in a titanic hand-to-hand struggle. Using his guitar as a weapon, Paulus finally overcomes Slinkaround and forces him back up the hillside, where they all demand that he lead them to Tarzan. You must show us where Tarzan is. So off they go again. And as they make their dangerous way through the snow and the rocks and the ice and the trees, suddenly they hear, oh, 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 oh. It's Tarzan himself, charging down the mountainside to see his old friends and once again exchanging jungle greetings. But as they chat together, they hear something else. Oh, 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 oh. It's the son of Tarzan, and he too comes charging down the mountainside to greet all the ladies with wild kisses. And in fact, he grabs one of them and carries her off. Just temporarily, of course. But then, while they are standing around talking about old times, all of a sudden, they hear a desperate cry for help. And running up to the group are three women in deep distress. The last whale is lost. The last whale in the world is lost. We've got to save the whale. Tarzan, can you save the whale for us? Well, Tarzan senses that this is a very special place, and he sits himself down by the water's edge to see if he can sense the source of some powerful vibrations he's receiving. And almost immediately, his extrasensory perception leads him to the very spot where the whale has been submerged. And the finding of this last whale eventually leads to the restoration of whales all over the world. In fact, the Connecticut legislature in the year 1975 did actually designate the sperm whale as Connecticut's official state animal to become a symbol of conservation and a springboard for education. So once again, Tarzan had saved the day.
We hope you've enjoyed this Barstow travel adventure film. We'll be releasing more of Robbins Barstow's home movies on this YouTube channel during 2021. Click here to subscribe and receive the latest updates. Meanwhile, enjoy these other films by a master of home movie storytelling in the pre-digital era.